Good afternoon. It is a distinct pleasure to be with you today. It's a great honor to have spent the last few days with you. Yesterday we had a great session with a few of you talking about the benefits of performance excellence, thinking of organizations as a whole and how an organization can improve if we act and think as an organization and become literate in our process thinking. My goal today is to talk to you about how that translates into specific patient safety alternatives and how that process can help us. So for those of you who were at the meeting yesterday, some of this will be duplicative, but some of it will not be. I want to start with some data from the state of Minnesota in the United States. I live in Minnesota, so I have access to some of the data there. And you will notice in there that we have become stagnant in our ability to address patient safety initiatives in Minnesota specifically. Minnesota, the reason I bring Minnesota up is because Minnesota is more advanced, I think, than most, if not all, states in the United States. Yet over the past few years, in our efforts to address patient safety issues, events with harm, you'll notice that we've become stagnant. Why is that? Why is it that we are not able to make improvements in the way that we thought we would be able to? Now, again, for Minnesota, as we try and outline specifically some of the issues we're trying to address, we can see that the top issues we're trying to work on are pressure ulcers, falls, wrong site surgery. I'll give you some data on wrong site surgery. But the point here is that from a patient safety perspective, the last few years has not been as successful as it might otherwise be. We've asked ourselves, why is that, and what can we do to try and impact that? And I am hopeful that some of the things that we're finding might be of use to you. I hope that could be true. We can see from our wrong site surgery data that we're continuing to go in the wrong direction as well. This is the most basic of issues. And we're not making the progress that we thought that we would be able to make. As we look at areas where these events are coming from and look at some of the solutions, it's important to see that the top issue here is simply our rules, policies, and procedures. The environment follows, but it's our ability to get our employees engaged in the rules and the process and the policies and the procedures that is making a difference for us in our system. I want to talk today a little bit about what this means for us and what the concept of a just culture is. I think, that the next phase of improvement for us is to create in an organization a just culture, meaning that if somebody feels like we're going to do harm to a patient, that they feel safe in bringing that up. They can anybody, for example, in a just culture, anybody in an operating room, from a technician to a nurse to a radiology technician or the surgeon, can stop the procedure if they feel like something is wrong and we're going to cause harm to that patient. And they can do that without fear of being punished for their initiative. So anybody, I believe that as we see organizations improve, the way that we get to the next level of improvement is to develop a culture where people in the organization look for how other organizations are improving, and they look at that not fearful that somebody else is doing it better, but with a thirst for knowledge. a thirst for finding out how we can do better. And we look at other organizations to learn from them and take anything from them we can as we go forward. That is a culture that fosters improvement. There are 3 parts of a just culture that allow us to measure how well an organization is prepared as a collective, as an organization in whole, to make a difference. We have to realize that sometimes there are simply human errors, or people make mistakes. Now, in your organization, what happens if somebody makes a human mistake? Do we fire them? Do we coach them? Do we help them? Do we ignore it? We can't ignore it either. But if we fire people for human mistakes, what is the chance they're going to come and try and tell us about opportunities to improve? Because rarely are the mistakes people made a mistake of their own personal doing, but rather a mistake of a process about which they are the recipient. There are at-risk behaviors. People do things that they know they shouldn't be doing, and in doing that, they weigh the consequences of that event. And finally, there are people who, whether knowingly or not, engage in reckless behavior. Each of those are different, and each of those should be and can be treated differently. Let me talk to you a little bit about what a just culture does. As we move along this continuum, we see that organizations that have when you develop a just culture, if you have a human error, something that happens because of a system design or a failure in the process, somebody isn't in a position to do the right thing, the appropriate thing is to console that person and fix the process. That's what we do. For organizations or people that engage in at-risk behaviors, that means we manage through the removing incentives for at-risk behaviors, we create incentives for healthy behaviors, and we increase the perception of risk. So if we looked at, yesterday, Ran and Shmulik and I were talking about seatbelts in cars. It used to be that when I was a child, I would never as a child wear a seatbelt. Why is that? Is that because I was dumber then than children are today? Or is it because we didn't fully understand the benefit of seatbelts? We must have understood them or they wouldn't be there. But as we have developed in our societies, the use of seatbelts, we've moved that across the continuum. It used to be that it was just we didn't take the time to do our seatbelts. It was a human error. It was there. We can fix that. We educated people, tried to address that. And we moved it to an at-risk behavior. We knew the consequence if we choose not to do that. That is our judging the risk of whether or not we're going to get in an accident and taking that risk. It's an at-risk behavior. Doesn't make any sense, but it's an at-risk behavior. Now today, if we look at buckling seatbelts, it's truly a reckless behavior. To not buckle your seatbelt, we've moved it in society to a point where it's a reckless behavior. We can find those things in healthcare if we look at it. We can find today people who should be doing things that they're not doing, and we would judge that to be a reckless behavior. If we had a physician that didn't give antibiotics for a raised temperature after surgery, we would think that what just didn't make sense. There are options today for us to address that. Let's talk a little bit about, we're going to talk first about the concept of human error. And what that means as we move through that continuum. Did the employee, there's two questions to ask. Did the employee make the correct decision, and is the employee effectively managing his or her own performance? If they are, then what happened to them, not because of them. We need to console them and fix the process. That's our responsibility in healthcare, is to fix the process. We think, and not punish them. If they become punished, they're not going to become engaged in finding the solution. Punishment is not the option. If we're managing an at-risk behavior, then we have to drive the perception of the consequence. Sometimes the consequence is delayed for the action. We need to make sure that if we have people engaging in at-risk behaviors, intentionally calculating whether or not they can get by with this action that they know is the wrong action, then we coach them. We coach them because their behavior is at risk and making the difference. Finally, why do we not punish at-risk behavior? Because somewhere along the line, your organization has likely tacitly approved certain at-risk behaviors. If you have an organization, for example, yesterday we talked about the fact that in some organizations, maybe in this country, maybe not, we talk about quality, but we're focused on finances. And really what we're about is about the finances, and we say we're interested in quality. That means, are you laughing? Stop it. It was not a joke. There is no cynicism here. Is there cynicism in this country? Okay, you all just leave. I'm done with you. But truly, if we say one thing and we do another, we are tacitly approving a process that for which we should not hold the employee responsible. If you punish at-risk behavior, people will not likely be honest as they try and address that. We want people to be honest. We want them to become engaged. We want them to tell us when we think we're at a point where the process won't work. So remember now, we've talked about human error. We're going to console people, at-risk behavior, coaching people. Finally, let's talk a little bit about reckless behavior. Reckless behavior is different. It's a conscious disregard of substantial and unjustifiable risk. And that's when we manage through by disciplinary action. That's the choice that we make, and that's when we can make a choice, a difference there because of the disciplinary action that we take. It's important processes. We have found, I have found in my business life, and as I now work with many organizations, that as organizations want to make a true difference in improving their safety, they have to make sure that we are fully and completely engaged with all the employees, and the employees can work in a just culture. The National Patient Safety Foundation created a model for this, and you can see the website there on the bottom. If you go to npsf.org/culture of safety, it will give you not only a specific listing of what these things are that drive this culture, but a way to measure this in your organization. A way to find out from your people in your organization where you land on that chart. Because you have an obligation to know. We have an obligation to know. And we have an obligation to identify that and then work for improvement. Because this is the part that some of the people saw yesterday. We have so many things to pick from, so many tactics that will make us address individual improvement opportunities. It doesn't help when we're punishing people for things there's many things for us to choose from, and it's important that we choose the right tactics. So this is one of the issues that we addressed yesterday in this session that I was at. I want to make sure I get to the to the right stuff here. I'm all of a sudden losing my clock. I want to, in an organization, if you are not able to get the organization focused as a whole on the right exact outcome, then you never gain the benefit of what the whole organization can do. My work today, everything that I'm engaged in, is getting organizations to work together. And one of the ways you do is you drive that fear out of the organization. As you drive the fear out, you're able to address some of the patient safety, patient quality initiatives, and get everybody in the organization focusing in the right way. We talked about yesterday the model from the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. The process here is the same in the European Quality for the European Quality EFQM, European Foundation for Quality Management. The process is the same. It's a criteria for organizations to think and act like one, like we're a living organism acting in our own behavior, own best interest. We oftentimes get organizations where different departments think in different ways. That's not helpful. We can't do that. And if you're in an organization where different departments are thinking in different ways, I assure you, you have people who are afraid to bring up areas that make them nervous for fear of punishment. Because right now you're competing against each other. What we want to do is embed systems, align approaches, and get to a point where each of those approaches are fully integrated. And if we do that, the organization truly thinks and acts like one organization. So I have some questions to ask for your I actually want to go one more chart. As we think about finding the best way to do things and thinking and acting like a living organism in our organizations. As we drive variation out of our industries, we will be better at what we do. But we can't, if we do 10 things, if we do the same procedure 10 different ways, one of those ways is the best. And if we're able to merge toward that best way, we're going to improve performance. This is one simple example. We would all say that as organizations improve their performance in washing hands, the safety of our patients is improved. Can we just agree to that? That washing hands helps. So this is a simple diagram from Memorial Hermann Health System in Houston, Texas. As they drove variation, you can see that the mean is the dark line right there, and you can see the variation in the different units. They would measure that. As the variation decreases, the mean performance improves every time. As we find the best way to do anything, the performance improves. So over time, as the variation decreases, performance improves. My goal here is to help you understand that as we're addressing performance, as we're addressing improvement, our goal is to, number one, develop a culture where people are willing to talk, where they're willing to engage, where they're willing to tell you, I don't think this is right. As we do that, as we listen to them, then we start to focus on the process. It's not a person issue, it's a process issue. As we work on the process, we start to think and act like an entity, and as we work on that process and drive the variation out, then we start to improve performance. We cannot allow, in today's world, variation in our performance, or it will truly not work in our best interest. So my question to you is, in closing, I will ask you, this is an exercise we went through yesterday. Who here was in that session yesterday? I need you to stand up if you were in that session yesterday. Yes, stand up. Okay, I'm going to call you out if you don't stand up. It's going to be worse if you sit down. Okay, these are the experts. Ask these people what this means. They will know the answers to this. If you want your organization, let me ask you from your organization, if every senior executive, the CEO, and everybody who reports to the CEO, if they were to be asked these questions, would they all answer the same exact answer? And then would everybody in your organization answer the same exact, have the same exact answer? As you move closer to getting the same answers on these questions, you will drive variation out and you will improve your performance. Thank you very much for having me today.